Hey, ZK Racers. So we've had holiday, Mystery went on vacation, so we've been a little bit dark hosting the rally as well. But now, in the past months, this whole entire year, we've been extremely active with the ZK Race team. And there are some very, very exciting things that we are going to hint about a little bit today. They're not fully confirmed, so we can't go into massive details, but we want to address a little bit of that. But most importantly, with all the changes in the game, the one thing that we were pushing them on was that before Gen 1 breeding and before some of these major changes take effect, we felt that one of the most important things to lock down was the ancestral rewards. And so happy that they did that. And the way they did it with the white paper, felt like they did a spectacular job. And today we want to go over that in detail with you.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those features that I don't think a lot of people knew was coming. We've obviously talked about our desire to see rewards for some of the Gen 0 holders, as well as just some of the OGs in the game who've stuck it out. Even though Gen 1s have been showing up, and we've definitely got, probably about as many Gen 1s now as there were Gen 0s. It's really cool to see that the team is looking to reward ancestral lineage and focusing on all of your stable, not just those that held on to the Gen 0s. As we know that Gen 2s are coming, it's going to be really important that even if you just got started in the game and you've only got Gen 1s, you're going to have a way to start getting payouts in the future. So you can treat each layer, each generation as like a starting point. If you started back at Gen 0, you just have one more layer to that entire reward system. Here you can see it's pretty simple. It's a very basic table, but we wanted to make sure that people understood what they're looking at. The first column obviously is the generation that we're talking about. Gen 0's breeding generates a Gen 1, right? But we don't have Gen 1 breeding that's about to come out. So that second row, or I guess third row here where it says Gen 1, is pointing out that there's not only going to be the original system fee, which is basically the 50 Zerk fee that you pay for breeding. There's going to be an additional 10 Zerk fee. So it's just going to cost you 60 Zerk to breed a Gen 1. And that's going to be really important as you look down this table. Each generation, when you breed, is going to add an additional ancestral fee to the base system fee.
Yeah, what I like about this is that as you expand each generation of breeding, the cost of that is going to go up. So hopefully the value of Zerk goes up. So it makes it more strategic to decide when you want to add that. Because as soon as we have Gen 2s, they should be really fast or incredibly slow in the donkey world. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Gen 3s and Gen 4s. So there needed to be a mechanism in place that was self-regulating that. So that way that only the right horses begin to breed and people just don't oversaturate it. And I think that this is going to assist with that greatly.
Yeah, this is a great way to throttle the number of horses that are coming in any new generation. Obviously, it's exciting to see Gen 2 start showing up, but we also don't want it to be suddenly even easier to do that than it was to breed the Gen 0s and make those Gen 1s. So knowing that eventually Gen 0s are not going to be part of the breeding scheme, as we get down to Gen 3s and 4s, they're going to be so fast that you probably won't be involving a lot of Gen 0s anymore. We wanted to make sure that people who had those Gen 0s weren't just sitting there going, well, what's in it for me? I can't race. I can't really breed anymore. It takes too long to breed Gen 0s and create the Gen 1 that would make the Gen 2, 3, 4 to get you back and involved again. They would start to lose value. But with the ancestral payouts, and we're going to show you how that breaks down in terms of reward, you're going to be able to hold on to those Gen 0s, continue to breed them if you want, and build out your stable even larger so that you can get a wider net for more rewards. So let's actually scroll down here in the white paper and take a look at their first example that they had for pairing horses together. And this is a really basic, what we would expect to happen in the next round of breeding. We've got 4 Gen 0s at the top of the chart. They have each a Gen 1 of their own, and those Gen 1s breed and form a Gen 2. This is very simple. It's as basic as it gets for the next round of breeding. You will pay a 50 Zerk system fee and a 10 Zerk ancestral fee. The 10 Zerk ancestral fee then gets split very easily. The math is easy. The parents of the breeding horses get to split 50% of the payouts. That's what it is. And then if there's additional ancestors involved in the pairing, the other 50% of that ancestral fee will go to all of them. In this case, we've got 2 Gen 1s and they have 4 parents. So the entire fee gets split evenly amongst all 4 Gen 0s.
And just to throw this out too, we did confirm with them that there is going to be no restrictions on which horses breed. So siblings will be able to breed. So in this pairing, in theory, you could have 2 Gen 0s create 2 foals and have those foals breed. The benefit to this is that 100% of that ancestral rewards goes back to you. So even though it costs 60 Zerk to breed, for you, it's only going to cost 50 because you'll get that 10. So for stables that hang on to their Gen 0s and eventually their Gen 1s, as you continue to expand your generational lineage, your fee is going to stay flat at the 50 Zerk. So what's nice about this is that people are not just going to slough off their Gen 0s and then their Gen 1s and saturate the market. There's going to be an incentive to hang on to those horses. So that way, for you, your cost of breeding never goes up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to that point, this graphic, imagine we just saw the right-hand side, not the entire left-hand side. If the horse, the 2 Gen 1s came from one set of parents, you would be collecting all of those fees yourself. Now, the other example here is that you could own all of these Gen 0s, all 4 of them. If you owned all 4 of them, again, you're going to get that entire ancestral fee back, and breeding is going to look like it just costs you the original 50 Zerk.
Yep.
So that's really powerful for people that are trying to build out their own stable. And to your point earlier, it's great for long-term value in the market, making sure that people don't just go, well, I'm done breeding my Gen 0s, time to get rid of them, sell them for cheap, and just throw them back on the market. No, you're going to want to hang on to those so that you can continue to get a fraction of every payout going forward.
Now, on that note, I would like to pivot real quick and talk about, hint towards some of the conversations that we've been having with the team. So we can't say the specific details because it's not been fully ironed out, but for months now, we've been working very closely with them on modifying the game in a way that will honestly make this game a lot more fun. So I could say personally that if they do what we've kind of heard them talk about, I'm literally excited to play the game. I think it's going to be a lot more fun, a lot more dynamic, and a lot more engagement into the game. So as we hear more and as we get more confirmations, we'll talk more about it. But with that said, if this is right, I do see that there's going to be a massive motivation to have large stables and to race a lot more aggressively. So as we start to do that, there's going to be a benefit not only to hold on to your Gen 0s and your Gen 1s while you're breeding. It's going to be just a benefit from the ancestral rewards, but there's going to be other benefits within the game and scoring mechanisms, how it all structured. So with that said, we're going to take a look now at more complex ancestral rewards, and just with the anticipation that participation is going to go up and it's going to be smarter for you to have larger stables.
That's exactly right. Let's take a look at another example that they had in that Medium article. And at first glance, this can be rather confusing, but I actually like the way they broke this down with the 2 different examples. Let's start on the left-hand side because that's familiar, right? We have the Gen 0s that bred a Gen 1, and it's now involved in this pairing. This pairing has a Gen 1 that is breeding with a Gen 2. So when we look at the right-hand side of this graphic, you have the 4 Gen 0s, the 2 Gen 1s that made that Gen 2, and then that Gen 2 is pairing with that original Gen 1 I mentioned to make a Gen 3. Now, when it comes to ancestral payouts, or fees, I should say, you're always going to have a 10x multiplier on the generation that you're creating. So in this case, we're creating a Gen 3. So 10x would mean
10 plus.
Oh, sorry. On the parents' generation, my bad. Not on the generation you're creating, on the parents' generation. So the last generation involved was a Gen 2 in the pairing. So we now have a 20 Zerk ancestral fee that gets split. The parents, again, are going to split 50%. So in this case, on the left-hand side, the Gen 0s in the top left corner, they get a portion of that original 50% by themselves. So it gets split evenly. The 50% gets split evenly between the 2 Gen 0s in the top left and the 2 Gen 1s on the right-hand side. I know that's a little confusing, but just think of it as the parents get to split half the pool.
Yep.
Then the rest of the lineage, which in this case would be the 4 Gen 0s in the upper right-hand corner, they get to split the other 50%. So if you were holding on to all 6 of these Gen 0s, you would, in theory, get the largest chunk of the entire payout. And if you owned all of the Gen 0s and the Gen 1s involved in this breeding, you would get 100% of that 20 Zerk back.
Yep.
So again, it would just cost you 50 Zerk, the normal price, to breed your Gen 1 and Gen 2 to make a Gen 3 in the future.
So now going forward, playing the game, I think what the strongest benefits that this is going to set forth is the marketplace. So renting good horses. If you're stuck in the middle with a mediocre horse that's neither a donkey or a champion, and you're stuck, this gives you a value to rent a very strong horse and breed hopefully a good foal, because once you have that, you will now have something to start breeding, and then that Gen 0 is going to take benefits from that. The other thing that is going to create value is now networking better. So if you have horses, they should be breeding as much as possible. The last thing of value that you could bring out is that the Gen 0s that have been breeding religiously since the beginning of the game, they're going to have the largest ancestral pool, most likely, going forward. So even though that horse might not make as much money from racing, if there's 20 plus foals out there breeding on its behalf, those are all going to be kickbacks to that horse. So those Gen 0s that, especially that have bred aggressively on the marketplace, most likely will be higher value because they come with a residual income element that did not exist in the game.
I think it's also important here that we don't gloss over the fact that breeding really is not just about the best horses in the game. It's also now become the worst horses in the game have a place to race. And so breeding the worst horses actually has value, which obviously leaves the middle of the entire pool of horses kind of wondering what they're going to do. But what's great is in the past, if you had kind of a mid-level horse and it bred with, say, a decent horse, and let's say you ended up getting the worst of all the traits and it went down, you were just kind of like, well, I'm SOL, right? Like I have no reason to keep this horse anymore. But now with running worst time races, having donkeys that actually can provide value. So you're looking for an extreme swing up or down with any breeding pair that you make, and it gives you value. And again, the payouts are the same. Doesn't matter if you bred a donkey or you bred a champ. You're going to end up getting payouts from that in the future. So you're just looking for value either up and or down.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is adding to that little bit of a hint. That discussion that we're bringing up about why I think that this is going to be really exciting is that if the changes that they're working on go into effect, where we hope those mid-level horses will have utility. So we have our great utility for the champions and the donkeys, and then there will be a purpose for those mid-level horses, which I feel like is one of the last missing pieces of the game. And once all those are in place, I think it's just going to be off to the races.
Yeah, there's actually one other thing here in the white paper or in the Medium article that I wanted to point out, and that's a couple of unique situations with regard to payouts. For the most part, these aren't going to affect you, but I just wanted to mention them in case you're wondering how this would be handled. In one case, if there's missing parents. Now, this occurs if you've got obviously Gen 0s. Gen 0s have no parents, so there's no payouts going above the Gen 0 level. But there's also situations out there where maybe you won a Gen 1 horse, right? And some of those Gen 1 horses were generated without any parents. In that case, the ancestral fee just gets split amongst all the remaining ancestors, not including the payout portion that would go to the parent in that case. So the other parents get to split that 50%. So however many parents are involved, they split that 50% pool. Just think of it as whether it's 2 or 4. That's just dependent on the scenario.
That's how you get
I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
It's good. It's like the first time I've been coughing in a video for a while, though. That's kind of nice.
Funny enough, I was like gagging this morning. I was like, oh, that sucks. But I'll be okay.